Yeah, so in retooling Human Business Works and planning what we're going to take it on this year and what we're going to do, I came up with some really aggressive goals at the end of the last year. And I sat down with Rob and I said, these seem kind of aggressive, but here's how we can make them. And I was sort of laying it out by, this product, we're going to do this many of that. This thing, we're going to do this many of that. If I get this many speeches, then that adds on, and this is how it's going to work. And Rob's like, that's pretty aggressive. And I was like, I think... And it was, and I'll tell the numbers. I mean, I was looking to see, could I have a $3 million year this year, and in revenue, not in my own pocket, and which is way better than my 2011, because my 2011, we didn't even cross $1 million, and so I was asking for a very substantial change in number. But when I started doing some math, one of the things I finally did was I said, well, you know what? What does even $1 million look like broken out by month? And $1 million broken out by month is you have to cover 84 grand in revenue every single month. And the minute I thought that, I said, wow, in January, I have to make 84 grand. Now, I charge a lot for my speeches, so 4 speeches would get me to 84 grand, but I don't have 4 on tap. I have 2 for January. And that's all that she wrote, because it's not like someone last minutes me and says, hey, can you swing by? And so then I have to do other things to try to cover the rest of that nut. And if I don't, then I have to make 120 in February. If you're in sales, you understand this, because that's how they teach you. In sales, you've got a revenue goal, and it's $8,000. And if you take a draw on that 8,000 and you don't make it, then you owe even more the next month, and it cascades. So that's one of the things I was thinking. The other thing everyone does wrong is when they think about pricing themselves or pricing their product and whatever, they never seem to do it from the, here's my revenue goal. And if you want to figure out your revenue goal first, that's how you're going to understand how to do business. Like, I came up with this great idea. I was so impressed with myself, and I spent on the URL, I started doing design work with Josh. I was like, I'm down the path. And when I really came down to it, it was maybe like $100,000 business, which, I mean, hey, lots of people would want, but I was like going to commit 10 or 20 hours a week to try to get another 100,000 into my budget a year. If I'm looking to make $1 million in a year, or 3 million, which was originally the goal, going after 20 hours a week to try to get a $100,000 business isn't the way it's going to get done. So that's kind of how I went at it. Joe, what do you have to add to that? I mean, I feel like I kind of just went at my version of that, but what's yours?
No, and I'm glad that you did, because I knew that the angle we'd be coming at this was very different. And I probably, to a fault, am a person who plans very conservatively for sales and budgets for revenue that way. And I'm trying to change my ways, but most of the time what I do is create here's a break-even scenario. This is the amount of revenue we have to do to cover all of our costs from a food standpoint, from a fixed standpoint, as well as from a payroll standpoint. All of the costs associated with doing business. This is probably the maximum capacity that the business has the capability to do. Because we're talking about restaurants, and while that might actually work for a couple other styles, that's usually what I do. I set up a break-even first, then what's our capacity for sales? If we're full every single day, every single minute, how high could our sales get? And then forecast, labor and all of those things around it. Because the unique thing for a service-based business that's also selling a product is the break-even point for us comes at a point where obviously we're paying all of our bills. But then the fixed costs, which you could consider food and labor to be a fixed number, because sometimes your sales increases without those expenses increasing at the same ratio. And getting into that small segment is where really profits start to get made. So most of the time I start by setting those 2 goals, and then I say, all right, how realistic does break even look, and where do we actually start to make money? And then I start to build a model around that, so that, again, there's a realistic number. If you're not going to come out of the gates reaching your highest, just like you said, you were afraid of January even. I'm setting a revenue goal, and if January looks like this, I could be in trouble. But so that's probably how it's different for me, because we can stand back and theoretically define what our maximum capacity for revenue is. And that, that might be a little bit unusual.
Yeah, I mean, as you were saying it, I was thinking we have to take that into account too when we're talking about how do you figure out your revenue. Is yours is a margin-based business. Your business is basically, how do I get more out of the margin? And that's the deal. So in my business, it's kind of a, how much time do I have kind of a business? And, there's different ways to get at that. So I think that you have to understand the model. I mean, in mine, I can't add more Chris Brogans. In yours, you can add more restaurants, but then you're going to incur a lot of upfront costs, which then have to, there's a ramp thing. You have overhead that I don't have, and everyone's business is different that way, and I guess that's what we have to take into effect.